Hi, everyone. Thanks for participating today. My name is Miriam Siegel, and I'm an epidemiologist working on NIOSH's National Firefighter Registry. Andrea Wilkinson is a health scientist on the NFR team who will be joining me for a discussion following our presentation. In the U.S., there are over 1.1 million firefighters that protect our homes, communities, and environments. Every year, these firefighters respond to roughly 1.4 million fires, 500,000 of which are burning structures. Exposure studies have shown that there are hundreds of compounds released from burning materials. Over a dozen substances that have been identified on the fire ground are classified as known carcinogens by the International Agency for Research on Cancer, the world's leading expert on identifying environmental causes of cancer. IARC also classified the occupation of firefighting itself as a possible carcinogen in 2010, and recently announced it as a high priority for reevaluation based on new evidence. That new evidence is comprised of a large increase in studies on cancer in firefighters over the past decade. These select meta-analyses combined the results of past individual studies and show growth in the number and types of cancers that appear related to firefighting. A number of studies have evaluated cancer in firefighters using case-controlled designs from state cancer registry data. For example, an analysis done by NIOSH and California's Cancer Registry compared the number of firefighters among case patients to control patients using the occupational code recorded in the Cancer Registry record. A number of cancers were associated with a firefighting occupation overall, and several additional cancers were related to firefighting in small samples of non-white patients. A study published this year by the University of Miami used firefighting status available from the Florida State Fire Marshal's Office to classify the occupation of firefighters in the state cancer registry. Several cancers were found to be associated with firefighting, including select cancers in small samples of women. NIOSH's records-based retrospective cohort study, published in 2014, is the largest study of cancer incidence and mortality in U.S. firefighters to date. The study found that firefighters had more cancer deaths and diagnoses than the general population, primarily due to digestive, respiratory, urinary, and oral cancers. A 2020 mortality update also found excess non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Elevated rates of select cancers were also observed among non-white and female firefighters, but samples were small, or some estimates were not statistically significant. By looking at past studies, we can make some conclusions, but these also lead to additional questions. Studies generally report a link between firefighting and cancer, and certain cancers are consistently elevated with some variation in risk estimates. However, little information exists beyond simple occupational status. Few studies have been able to analyze exposure-response relationships using fire incident records. But there's a lot more to the picture to be able to assess what about firefighting increases the risk for cancer. Analyses have demonstrated that cancers among different subgroups of firefighters appear consistently inconsistent, meaning that there hasn't been much consensus about which cancers are elevated among select groups of firefighters, but it does appear that female and minority firefighters have a unique experience as it relates to cancer risk. Women make up roughly 8% of career and volunteer firefighters, but we haven't been able to study enough women to make conclusions about their cancer risk overall or specific cancers that affect predominantly women. A lot is still to be learned about how the risk for cancer varies by demographic subgroups, subspecialties of firefighting, including volunteer and wildland firefighters, and across different regions of the country. Some past studies have indicated that the magnitude of risk associated with firefighting may still be small compared to some lifestyle risk factors like smoking for select cancers. But most studies haven't been able to account for personal and behavioral risk factors for cancer and how they may interact with occupation to affect firefighters' risk of cancer. In short, there are no central and comprehensive sources of data that provide details about firefighters' occupation, personal risk factors and behaviors, and cancer status on a national level. These knowledge gaps contributed to the development of the Firefighter Cancer Registry Act of 2018, a mandate to the CDC's National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health to develop a voluntary registry of firefighters for monitoring and evaluating cancer and cancer risk factors. The goal of the NFR is to track cancer and risk factors over time to better understand the link between workplace exposures and cancer. It's really important to note that all firefighters will be strongly encouraged to join the NFR, not just those with cancer. The NFR is more of an exposure registry than a cancer registry, which is essential for understanding differences between firefighters that do and do not develop cancer. Firefighters' participation in the NFR is voluntary, and no one can force you to register, but your participation will contribute to a long-term scientific understanding of how firefighting exposures relate to cancer. We hope to enroll 200,000 or more firefighters, and we'll have a recruitment emphasis on women, minorities, and volunteers as specified by the Act. We're also interested in various subspecialty groups that have been understudied, such as instructors, wildland firefighters, and fire investigators. All firefighters will register through a secure online web portal, which will take about 30 to 45 minutes. Once firefighters provide consent to participate, they will be able to establish an account through login.gov, which protects participants and their information using tools like identity proofing and two-factor authentication. You will be asked for your social security number for two important reasons. First, login.gov, the system that will establish your account, requires it to protect privacy by verifying that you are who you say you are when creating your NFR account. And second, social security number allows the NFR team to determine cancer outcomes for all participants with near 100% accuracy when searching databases of cancer diagnoses and fatalities. Participants will then answer questions about themselves and their work, lifestyle, and health through a user profile and an enrollment questionnaire. Follow-up questionnaires will also be administered through this web portal. If you give us permission, we may additionally be able to use information from department records or exposure tracking apps to supplement your exposure data. All information will be kept secure and confidential, and identifiable data will be covered under an assurance of confidentiality, which is our highest level of protection available. Our team will obtain accurate details about past or future potential cancer diagnoses by periodically linking NFR information with data from state cancer registries, which are databases of all cancers diagnosed in a state. This step allows us to identify cancer outcomes without putting the burden on firefighters to report details about a diagnosis to NIOSH, when that may be the last thing on their mind. Similarly, we can use information from the National Death Index to assess cancer mortality. This year has been spent planning for the NFR. We developed the enrollment questionnaire and a detailed protocol mapping out the design of the NFR, and we discussed these materials with a designated advisory committee of experts called the National Firefighter Registry Subcommittee, which Sarah Jenke is a part of, so thank you, Sarah. We plan to begin enrollment sometime in 2021 with ongoing data, linkages, analysis, and dissemination thereafter. Until then, you can find more information on our website listed here, and you are welcome to contact our team.